But sometimes innovation can also mean doing less.
Like, keep it simple.
How can we engage people, our teams that normally are really overwhelmed,
Yes.
to be more creative, to implement these innovative tools? Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite. Eu sou a Isa.
E eu sou o Júlio.
E você está?
Na diretoria.
O seu podcast sobre inovação, gestão, empreendedorismo e os bastidores das organizações.
A diretoria é oferecida pela Techni Methods, um ecossistema de ensino em métodos para pesquisa e para gestão.
E também é patrocinada pelo Hermes Pardini, há mais de 65 anos cuidando da nossa gente.
Bom, let's shift for English. This is a special episode. So Isa, who are with us today?
So, Julio, today we have a very special team of international professors on visual tools and innovation. Martin Eppler is Communications Management Professor, Director of the Media and Communications Management Institute, world's top 2% hashtag scientist according to Stanford University, author of 25 books and over 250 scientific articles, and also advisor and trainer for organizations such as the United Nations, the European Central Bank, Porsche, Salesforce, and among others.
And Fabienne Bünzli is researcher and lecturer at University of St. Gallen and a former visiting assistant professor at the Pennsylvania State University. Her research focuses on strategic communication, with particular emphasis on visual and verbal persuasion, as well as data communication. Her work has been published in peer-reviewed journals and has been presented at international conferences. Prior her work in academia, Fabienne gained extensive experience in communications as a PR specialist, media analyst, and journalist. So, welcome to the board. Martin, Fabienne, what exactly are visual communication tools, communication methods for our public? How can they use this in their real lives?
Thank you for this great question, Julio, and thank you for having us here, Isabel and Julio. I wish companies would use more visual tools so that they could see for themselves how easy and impactful they are. If you ask me in the innovation context, what is a must-use tool? I would say road mapping. Road mapping is key. It's so simple. All you need is a wall and a few Post-it notes and map out your next steps for the next 3 years and maybe relate that to what's happening in the market, to what's happening with your customers. So for me, one of the simplest visual tools that already adds value is a simple roadmap.
Cool. And Fabienne, about communication tools, what would you suggest? What kind of job you do that are useful for companies, for entrepreneurs, for example?
So one thing that we have recurrently seen in our research is that, like, keep it simple. Like, when you communicate with your audiences, or even like for internal purposes, keep it simple. For instance, when you have a presentation, use visual images rather than like long and lengthy lists of bullet points and so on. Really cut down everything, like all the, for instance, textual information that are not necessarily needed. Use visual images, for instance, to illustrate your visions, your ideas. And the reason is quite straightforward and simple. We know that visual images are better remembered, and people, and they make your ideas and your visions feel more real and tangible. So if you want, for instance, your supervisors, the executive board, or even your clients to feel that you can deliver like your promises, or that your product really helps them improve their lives and so on, include an image, like make it feel tangible and real.
That's super nice. So
Very
we
interesting.
already have our first takeaway of our chat here. So make it simple. You can communicate with scratches, drawings, images. And sometimes I think that we are really worried about content, wording, and maybe less is much. Less is more.
Less is more.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you. So, yes, this is super, super interesting. And Martin, in your TED Talk, you bring some discussion about visualization and how we can make visualization effective.
Mm-hmm.
You say that maybe or sometimes it's better to be ugly or to be like simple.
That's like a countersense, okay?
Yeah, so sometimes we think about the state of art. For example, it means
Consultants like us, we love beautiful slides, okay?
For sure.
For-
And sometimes they're needed for persuasive purposes. But my point was when you want people to collaborate, to have new ideas, to innovate together, if your ideas already look finished and shiny, other people will feel shy to improve them. And that's really a missed chance for innovation. So don't make your charts, your ideas too shiny, look too polished too soon.
so
Because
there's
then-
no room to engage and to help you to build the idea.
Exactly.
Okay.
However, when you use, as you endorsed, sketching and you make your ideas look provisional internally before you communicate them to the outside, then others will be more compelled to improve them, to suggest, tweaks. How can we make this even better? But if it already looks great, like a PowerPoint slide that's polished, then they say, okay, let's run with that. And I just advocate people to stay longer with the idea improvement, to make the innovation better. And the visual style you use has to communicate that you're not sure, that it's work in progress, that you're still inviting improvements. And if it looks too perfect, also visually, then they will feel reluctant to share their improvement ideas. So if you want innovation, make your ideas look ugly till the very end. And then when you communicate it externally, that's a different story.
Okay.
There you want to keep it simple, like Fabienne said, but also appealing and aesthetic, but not before. Don't look too much on aesthetics internally. Only once you've really improved the idea, make it look great.
In your TED Talk, you also bring some discussion, some concepts about visual metaphors and visual variation. Could you explore a little bit more about it, please?
A lot of innovation, as you know, is driven by engineers. And engineers sometimes communicate using purely diagrams. And to be appealing with innovations to everyone, I think we are not using enough visual metaphors. Like the cup is half full or the glass is half empty, right? That's a visual metaphor right here. Analogies, things that help you understand the new in the clothing of the old. Visual metaphors are great bridges to explain innovations to people who have never seen that before. Whereas diagrams, people shy away, or we call this also map shock. When you have a visual that's too complicated, people don't want to look at it. Whereas visual metaphors are intuitively appealing. So people want to explore them, right?
Could you give an example from us in a company that you use visual metaphors?
Yes. For example, you use the visual metaphor of an iceberg where the tip of the iceberg just shows one aspect and of the innovation or the risk. And then underneath the waterline, you see the rest, right? Or a mountain trail, right? That our goal is to reach the top of the mountain. And there are different trails that lead to that mountaintop. You can use things from nature, as I just did, but also you can use things from sports. Right? Cool. Like a football match, right? That I know, for example, Nike communicated its marketing strategy internally using a football field metaphor, just to make it more concrete, to simplify it. So visual metaphors, we tend to not to use them so much. They're like a new form, but we should, because they're engaging. As Fabienne mentioned, these images are very memorable. They're concrete. And they spark the imagination, the creativity, right? When you think of football, you think of many other things than just marketing, or of mountaineering, of hiking. So that helps people connect with what you're saying. The other part that you mentioned is visual variation. Sometimes we overload a single image, and that's not useful. It's a lot better to use different images. We can learn that from comic books.
Some comparison, yeah? You have a starting point to compare it.
You have a starting point. And then when you have a series of images, what happens is people want to continue that series. They build on the sequence and they come with their own idea. So I would advocate, just in conclusion for this, a much more collaborative use of visualization that involves people more. So think less presenting and think more involving, co-creating.
Sure.
And one point that calls a lot of attention is about creativity in organizations, okay? And we want to ask you how we can encourage people in organizations to foster creativity using communication skills, methods, what you would suggest for our audience about creativity in organizations?
Well, I guess the answer is very simple. Again, lead by example. So there is like having a vision or having those ideas and those goals. That's one thing. But the other thing is, how do you embed it in your daily routine? Do you make it a part of your organizational practices or not? So I think that's one thing that is very helpful. Yes, like show people how visual imagery or how creative techniques in more general and more broadly speaking, how they can help them and facilitate innovation. So really make it, show them the benefit and show them how they can improve the outcome.
I would totally subscribe to that. Make creativity a daily habit, but get rid of bad habits. One of the worst habits or myth that I see in many companies is they use brainstorming. And brainstorming, many studies have shown that is the worst of all creativity techniques. The first person who blurts out an idea contaminates everybody else. The introverts, who usually have the best ideas, never participate. They feel too shy, right? Usually you really can't have a good idea while at the same time you have to listen to others sharing theirs. So I think what everybody can do that's really simple to improve creativity at work is ban brainstorming and replace it with brain writing. Where simply instead of shouting out your idea right away, and usually the boss goes first and contaminates everybody else.
Our idea.
Think in that direction.
Very good.
Instead of that, have everybody write down their ideas in silence just for 2 minutes and then do a quick lightning round where everybody shares their idea. In this way, you use the diversity of people you have in the room also for the diversity in ideas, and you don't get influenced or manipulated by the first idea that is shared because you have written down your own idea, right? So if you want to make creativity a more important aspect of your work life, create daily habits about it. For example, end every meeting with a little brain writing. Did we have the but also stop doing what hurts. Stop doing brainstorming.
And also, if I may add to that, I mean, this is, an excellent point. And in addition to that, also do not content yourself with the first best idea that comes to your mind. Because we have this inclination to think that, okay, like, this is solid, like the 80-20 rule. Okay, this sounds like a proper idea, like sounds solid. Let's move forward with that. And especially maybe in some like managerial context, people tend to jump from the problem right away to the solution. And once they have one viable solution, they're going to stick with it, right? But what is often the case is that the first idea that you seem feasible or good enough is not actually the best one. So one simple technique is also is also known as the 5 whys technique.
Yeah.
So you ask again, okay, why is this a good solution? Like, or why is this addressing the root cause or the problem? How is this going to improve or how is this going to improve like the situation that we're facing and so on? So just ask yourself like why like 4 times and do not content yourself with the first best idea.
I think you brought a really interesting thing because sometimes we are in love with the solution and not with we are in love with the problem. And if we pursue that much in that kind of solution and we try to make everything right because that is the right solution, maybe we are not addressing the problem anymore.
Yes. I think that's a very important point. I just facilitated an innovation workshop where this was a really crucial point. So this was in Colombia and we were innovating with 4 different companies together. And what I did with them before we went to solutions, we did what is called question storming. I asked them to write down what is the question we're trying to answer today, right? To reframe also the problem, to show the different facets. I totally agree with you. And with Fabienne, sometimes we jump to the solution too quickly and we fall in love with our first feasible solution. That's a great way to kill innovation.
Yeah.
A way to foster innovation is broaden the problem, broaden the question, do question storming. What is it really that we're trying to solve? See more facets, and then let many perspectives, so to speak, shine on this problem before we, converge and select one. We have to endure this divergent phase a little bit longer if we really want innovation, and then converge a little bit later. Open up more facets of the problem, let more ideas come to life before we prioritize. I think that's really good advice.
Oh, super nice.
Fantastic insights. I have already taken notes about a lot of tools that can managers use in their workplace. Okay, so I'm really, really happy with this episode. Thank you once again. And let's talk about social media. I think it's a common interest of our listeners and our practitioners, okay? And Fabienne have some insights or some myth that I'm the guy of the CTAs, okay? I ask for the likes here, so people like, share the episode, subscribe, but activate the notification so you don't lose the content, okay? But what you recommend for the social media, for the digital marketers, for our companies, for everything?
Right?
Yeah. How we can effectively create engagement in social media?
So one very common myth here is that in every social media post, you need to include a call to action. And a call to action is often includes a command, like an imperative, like sign up here, or like click on this link, or maybe in nonprofit contexts, donate now, volunteer now, and so on and so forth. So it's often, we often very directly ask and request people to do certain things. And I've always believed that, this is the way to go. This is like the way how you increase and elicit user engagement. What we have seen, however, in our research is that this is not necessarily the best way how to increase user engagement. So what we have seen is that more subtle, more indirect requests are far more effective. They are more effective when you want to increase the number of likes or the comments or the number of shares, for instance. So, but what does a subtle request mean?
Help a diretoria to grow faster, okay?
That's a question. So we want to be very specific and also clear here. An indirect request is a request that is embedded within a question or within a statement. So, for instance, if like from a nonprofit context, in a nonprofit context, you would say something along the lines of, "Are you interested in volunteering?" Or "Have you considered donating?" Or "Would you like to make an impact today?" Things like that. Or you can also use statements such as, "You can make a difference by doing this and that. You can change the life of other people," or "Please consider leaving a comment here," and so on. So like you still have the request, but it's more, you convey it in a less forceful and in a less, let's say, obtrusive way. And we've seen that there is a significant, it does make a significant difference. Yeah.
It's like a purpose connected question for more, how we can say, more inspiring vision. We don't talk about our micro questions, but we connect with the whole important questions, okay?
And you offer it more like an option and not like a do it now request.
The relationship with the audience, I capture it. It's more about collaboration. It's more about construction and not another from me to you, okay?
And it actually makes a lot of sense, because it's the same with interpersonal or face-to-face communication, right? We want to be treated with respect. We want others to be appreciative of us, right? And we don't want them to just stop by and be like, "Okay, hey, do this task now, do this and that now." Like, we want to be like asked in a polite manner.
Yeah.
And the very same seems to apply in digital environments.
And how we can bring these kind of insights for internal communications inside our organization. So how can we engage people, our teams that normally are really overwhelmed, to be more creative, to implement these innovative tools, for example?
What Fabienne just described is a phenomenon known as reactance. Reactance is the automatic negative sort of resistance to changing when you see your freedom being threatened. And I see this a lot internally in change communication. When you tell people you have to now do this differently or else, you won't have a bright future. When you operate with threats,
like people, a top-down communication or something like this,
people will react negatively. So like in the social media context, in a leadership communication, we know this from many years of research. Open up options, refer to a common purpose, like you alluded to, show people the benefits they have when changing. So I think today it's very vital internally as well in your leadership communication to not operate with commands, but more with opening up options, suggesting good ways to go and highlighting the benefits and alluding to a common objective, a common purpose. Of course, sometimes you have to do that a little bit forcefully because you want to be agile, you want to be fast, but never revert to threats, never emphasize what people are going to lose, but rather what they can gain, right? Always emphasize the common relationship, the common goals, what you have in common, right? And don't revert to fear. That will backlash eventually. I know sometimes when you're under pressure, also as a leader, you may be tempted to do that, to pass on the pressure you have from your board or from shareholders, but that usually backfires.
Very good.
That's super nice. And can you bring some examples or a case of success of using this kind of communication and tools to create an innovative environment in some organizations?
Successful or unsuccessful experiences, okay? So you can relate, we can
do's
report
and do nots.
Do's and don'ts.
Do's and don'ts.
A recent example that comes to mind was I was facilitating an innovation workshop with a high technology company. This is in my home country, Switzerland. And we tend to spend a lot of time when talking about innovation, what we should do additionally. So what I did with that team, I also focused on what should we no longer do. And the success for me was they identified 4 things that they can stop that will save them a lot of money and that have no longer any value for the customer. But they had just been doing it, traditionally, and the competition.
Inertia.
Yeah, inertia, exactly. The competition also did the same things, but we focused a lot in this innovation workshop, not only on how they can leverage more their uniqueness, but which is important, but also what can we stop? And, these great questions that are sometimes underexplored, they are really catalysts for innovation. And what I liked is we were a very diverse group of people, the CEO, the chief technology officer, but also somebody who had joined the company recently, just, 6 months ago, who brought in fresh perspectives and said, I never understood why we do this in the first place. But for that, you also have to create psychological safety. Yeah. Everybody can speak freely. You won't get smacked down if you say something critical. Okay. I think so the method was important. We used only visual methods so that we could see opportunities for reducing also certain activities. And in the end, they also had a nice documentation to make sure the ideas survive later on. That's also important. You have to document the ideas in a way that they can then be implemented.
You have to give feedback for those who contribute in the process, okay?
Exactly.
They
not everybody can be in the workshop.
They feel involved, they feel rewarded, recognized, okay?
For sure.
Yes, and you have to give them, once again, the freedom to specify how they're going to enact the idea, how they're going to implement. That's also important. People will always feel more motivated to implement innovation if they have made it their own, if they have added their own elements. Mm-hmm. So the reason why I wanted to mention that recent experience is we often think innovation is doing more.
Yeah.
But sometimes innovation can also mean doing less, not continuing things that you have done that you thought were needed, but they're really not needed. So I would encourage, everyone, when you're doing innovation workshops, also think, what can we stop? What would be an innovation that we stop doing this? We no longer offer this, or we no longer ask this from clients, or we no longer provide this. Stopping doing things is also a kind of innovation, but one that we don't give enough attention to. A recent study in Nature even showed that we have this subtraction bias, that we don't think about what can we subtract to solve a problem, what can we eliminate. And it's such a fruitful question to ask yourself, where can we reduce effort? Especially, as you said, fantastic. Many people are overwhelmed, have too much work. So let's ease that. Let's think about what can we eliminate.
Very good.
Super nice. Sometimes we think, okay, to be more creative, to be more innovative, we don't need methodology. We don't need methods. But you're also saying about tools, methods to help people to be innovative, to bring more ideas to the table, to discuss, to evolve these ideas.
Yes.
So sometimes it's not a common consensus that we need to use method. Can you elaborate a little bit more about it, please?
Sure. One of the most frustrating results in my research was when I did a survey among many, many managers together with my students of what are creativity techniques that managers know. So we surveyed a lot of managers. Hey, what creativity techniques do you know? And guess what?
Or do you use?
I think it would be less. We asked both.
Oh, that's nice.
Which one do you know and which one do you use? And the answer was the same. And it was just one. And it was the worst one. It is exactly what you said, Claudia. It was brainstorming. So they know only one technique. And unfortunately, it's the worst one. Right? So... And it's like a child who has a hammer. The whole world becomes a nail that needs hammering, right? So whenever they have a complex problem, they say, oh, let's do brainstorming, because brainstorming gives you that pseudo feeling of being creative. But it's really just a pseudo feeling. Many studies show that. So what I think is really important to realize is, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, you can best do that by giving them a new tool. Right? Buckminster Fuller, the famous architect, he said that, and the inventor of the Fuller M, he said, if you want to teach people a new way of thinking, just give them a new tool. And using that tool will lead to a new way of thinking. I really believe in that. But you have to have a toolbox that is versatile enough. You can't just use brainwriting and think it's good. Sometimes you need reverse brainwriting. How can we make things worse in order to reframe? Sometimes you need the 5 whys to get to the root causes and address that, right? Sometimes you need visual variation to get into a visual mode of thinking. Sometimes you need to have sort of lateral thinking, analogies, visual metaphors, and build on that. I think it's very risky today to have just one tool. Of course, a fool with a tool is still a fool. Right? If you just use a tool mindlessly, it won't help you. And in creativity, I am the first one to say many breakthroughs can happen without a tool. The important concept of serendipity, of perchance discoveries. For that, your mindset is much more important, that you are observing, that you have an open mindset and see what's going on around you. And then breakthroughs may happen. And we have many examples of this, from Post-it notes to potato chips to champagne, right? That was discovered by chance, to penicillin and so forth. So tools, I think, help you change the way you think, help the way to reframe the problem. I mentioned question storming, right? Really powerful technique. But you can be creative even without a tool. But it really helps, especially in a team context.
Yeah.
Right? In teams. I think you need some structuring devices that help you also resist the temptation that Fabienne mentioned, that you think your first doable idea is the one you go with. No, you should tear that up and you should start again. You need methods that force you to torture your creative brain more, that force you to stay in the creative zone longer.
And I think that it's an important thing to highlight here. That's the power of the tool on creating, building, and not only the expected result of the dynamics of the workshop. For example, we see that a lot. Sometimes the result of the workshop isn't so successful in terms of idea generating, but the event created a relationship between people involved there who fosters collaboration in sequence of the event. So that's a kind of indirect effect of using collaborative tools, for example.
Yes. Yeah. You want to comment?
Absolutely. I mean, it's also like, at the end of the day, it's about the people, right? like if you need to get like the people on board, you need to work with them, you need to like motivate them for change. And if I may add an aspect, so let's assume you have this great idea and you've really, as Martin pointed out, like you've challenged the idea, you have used the 5 whys to make sure that it really tackles the root cause of the problem and so on. You're using visual techniques to really refine that idea. So let's assume you have this like polished or really viable, great idea. At one point, you need to make it like maybe bring evidence that it works. Maybe you even like collect data to see whether your new product is received well by your customers, or like do some A/B testing and so on. So at one stage, at one or often multiple stages, you need to collect data. Yeah. And then there is the question, well, what are you doing with the data? And often there is this common myth of, if only we have the data available, they will speak for themselves. Ooh. But that's not the case, right? You can have the best data available, but if you fail to communicate the data in an insightful manner, if you fail to derive actionable implications from that data, all of your efforts will have been in vain. And so what we often see is that people, like teams, put a lot of effort into the data collection and like the prototyping phase, right? But then at one point they fail to really convey like the key insights, the lessons learned. And one very important and very effective tool to make sure that, for instance, the executive board sees that like this prototype is working, we should further pursue this strategy or whatever, is to use data storytelling. And there are some very simple like tools and techniques that can really boost your data communication, or your, as we call it, your data fluency, which refers to the ability to convey or to communicate about data in a clear, accessible, and persuasive and convincing manner. So one of the tools of data storytelling involves to structure your data or to structure it into 3 parts, which is the situation, the complication, and the resolution part.
How you know that?
Yeah. I'm a consultant.
And every consultant must know this, right?
Yes,
but I'm not apart from that.
It's important because what we often like see is that when people have data, right, they dive right into the details to demonstrate that they did a thorough job, to demonstrate that they're really savvy and they have a lot of knowledge on the topic. But that scares people away. It's like in a day-to-day conversation, like if you overwhelm people with a lot of details or with a lot of like information there, you lose them very early on and they're not willing to listen to your ideas. So this is where the first part of the storytelling is situation. So provide an overview as to what's the problem and why is this relevant? Because we're all having like lots of problems, but some of those problems, they really merit our attention more than others. Yeah. So make sure people get these 2 things in the opening or in the beginning of your presentation or report. What's the problem? Why does it matter? And in what way does it matter for your audience? Because make sure that your audience, like whatever audience we're talking about, like executive boards, your supervisors, your peers, clients, like make sure that they understand in what way your problem or that problem is important to them. And support this claim with data. So show them, for instance, why this, like in numbers, what's the scope and dimension of the problem? And it's only then when you dive into the details, provide some more information about, for instance, the development over time. This is where you can show the trends, for instance. This is where you can like use all those fancy line charts that show you, okay, like we are losing customers left and right, and this has been going on for like 3 subsequent years and so on. This is where you can really provide some more detailed information, because you have your audience's attention. And then, and I think this is absolutely crucial, like always end your presentation with a so what and a call to action. But again, keep in mind how you convey that call to action. But never leave your audience hooked on some like, okay, this is a bad situation.
So what?
So what?
Without
Like,
a way forward.
yeah.
I gave a feedback this week on a team member because he was only pointing problems. Oh, we have this problem. So what?
Yeah.
What
What
is
we're
the
gonna do?
solution? Bring a proposal.
What are
Okay,
our
let's
options?
let's solve the problem. Okay.
And what are our next steps?
Yeah.
It's like in a movie, right? We want to know whether there's a happy ending or a sad ending, but we
need a
want to
closure.
know, we need closure.
Yep.
Yes, it's a very powerful concept also in psychology, need for closure or the closure itself. So, provide a way forward as you pointed out, Martin, like, yes, show them like, what are the options? What are different scenarios? What are suggestions and so on, but give them a sense of hope, or like depending on the problem, sense of hope is like, what can we do about it? But also a sense of self-efficacy, right? Having a problem feels subjectively uncomfortable. So you want to make sure that you provide people with some ideas as to how are we going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Yes. And just to bring, I was remembering about a day that I was creating this presentation with one slide, and we had one pager. Normally to make a report to an executive that has 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we have these 3 columns. We have the problem. So, I forgot the name of the columns. It's
Complication.
No,
Situation.
it's situation, complication, and
Resolution.
resolution. And it was like, hey, that's the problem. That's why it's important to have That's why it's
Take it
important
easy.
to have your attention here. It's
relevance.
important for you.
Yep.
It's
The
important
relevance
for
to the
your
audience.
organization. And then, so we can do this, and that to solve the problem.
The resolution, the
Yeah.
options.
So it was really effective. In one pager, we got the attention, and then we could dive in the details for sure. It was really good.
So we have a social project here that we want to invite you to collaborate, okay? That we call Bibliotexi, like a tech library, okay? So we want to hear from you recommendation of books or articles, something like that influence your career, your life, okay? So we want to ask you to recommend books and content for the audience.
You want to go first?
So I have 2 recommendations.
That's nice.
So the first thing,
Right.
Yeah.
so
Take note.
for anybody who's interested in or who's working with data communication and who feels that they struggle sometimes with conveying or communicating about their data in a clear and accessible manner, I would recommend our book called How to Talk About Data. And so it's basically it's a very practice-oriented and a highly visual guide that provides a specific recommendation as to what can you do to really enhance your data fluency? How can you make your visual? How can you make use of visuals to support your data communication? What are do's and don'ts? So it's very practical and very specific, and it just offers a guideline for everybody who would who'd like to boost their data communication skills. And the second one is for people interested in persuasion per se. Yes. Well, I'm highly biased, of course, in that regard. It's the Persuasion Handbook, edited by James Price Dillard and Lian Sheng, and it's an amazing book that really introduces readers to persuasion. It basically elaborates on different persuasive techniques and tactics, and provides empirical evidence as to their effects and so on. It sensitizes people to the fact that persuasion happens in a sequence of linked changes. So, for instance, like just to give a brief example, when you talk to marketing or communication specialists, the goal, like sometimes the goals that they try to achieve are a little bit fuzzy. Like, okay, we try to create awareness, or we want to increase the sales of a product. But the book really sensitizes you to the fact that there are many different persuasive outcomes, including cognitions, attitudes, beliefs, different types of behaviors. And you really have to know which type of outcome you would like to address to really tailor, choose an appropriate and matching communication style.
Don't use one hammer for every problem, okay?
Exactly. And that's also why I would recommend one book that has a multitude of methods. It's by Dave Gray and Sonny Brown and others. It's called Game Storming. And it's just a compilation of different visual games for innovation, but games for workshops, like good techniques, and they're super simple.
Very good.
I tried to do something similar myself, and I have a book that's also out in Portuguese, in Brazilian Portuguese, called Comunicação Visual, how to use design thinking for everyday problems. That's been doing well in Brazil. And the third book that I would recommend is my newest one. It's called Execpedia, where I also try to reduce.
I'm a fan of the
Thank
book.
you very much. I try to, leave all the storytelling out for once, all the methodology. This focuses just on the most important insights. For example, how do you pitch? You just mentioned pitching. So I visually provide answers to key questions of the workplace, different pitching approaches. And you can download that. It's a new book. It just completed, and it has 100 questions that everyone working in an organization should see as relevant. And then what's really particular about it is it answers it in one visual. So it's a visual answers to workplace questions. Because I wrote the book that I would like to have received when I started working, basically.
Do we have already translated this book for Portuguese?
I have not yet.
So the invitation is done, okay? It will be a pleasure if you can collaborate and distribute this book for Brazilian people.
Let's do it. And it started right here at this table.
Okay.
Right,
It will be a pleasure to give this kind of content for the audience. It will be a pleasure to collaborate in this task if you agree, okay?
Yes, it's super aligned with our motivation and our purpose, because we want to give access to knowledge, to inspiring stories, careers, because I don't know how to say, because it's really important to us to bring this kind of perspective, knowledge, tools to Brazilian people that are entrepreneurs, that are starting on their careers, because sometimes they don't have access to this.
And we see a lot of Brazilian people, micro entrepreneur, that are successful. They are so strengthening their mission. And if we give a simple contribution, a little push-up, it will
leverage a lot.
They
can fly, for sure.
This is one of the contributions we expect in the program.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wow.
So we are really thankful for having you here. It was a pleasure for me. Muito obrigada.
Para nós também.
And if you want to give a direct message to our audience, it's up on you.
Well, I would like to take it back to the beginning and what Fabienne said. Keep it simple, but also keep it engaging, whether you use visuals, whether it's the way you communicate, approach things from a collaborative atmosphere, from a collaborative point of view. And I think you will see more success than just a command and control mode.
Thank you, Fabienne.
Well, for me, it would be often communication seems to be a mystery, and people seem to do a lot of guessworking as to how to approach it, which communication style to use it, and so on. And one very simple advice that has always helped me is to just think of communication as a conversation. So how would you talk to your peers? How would you talk to your friends and family? And basically this is it. Whether it's an interpersonal communication or mass mediated communication, some of the basic principles of human communication, they apply across channels. So just think of that and be kind to people, be appreciative. And I think that's right. And be visual, really make people or help people see your vision, help them really imagine things that are non-existent yet, and make them excited using visuals.
So I have two comments, okay? First, we have to congratulate Isa for the excellent English conversation.
Parabéns.
Muito obrigada.
Her teacher should be also
Proud
of
Thank
her.
you.
sure.
Thank you.
And Martin, we used a visual strategy here to catch the attention of the public, the glasses style, okay? I'm kidding, okay? Martin had a problem with his eyes, so we just want to explain here, but that's no problem for us. We are so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
You
Thank
two
you.
are a huge inspiration for us, and we hope that many Brazilians meet you here and start to recognize the impact, the meaningful work that you have been done all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the
Obrigado.
opportunity. Então, pessoal, muitíssimo obrigado por ficar aqui até agora com a gente. Esse é um oferecimento da Techni e também do Hermes Pardini. Até a próxima.